Today, we have a very special guest artist, a DC native whose most recent exhibition was featured at the Brentwood Arts Exchange in Arts District of Mount Rainier, Maryland. She is also the founder of a creative space called The Stew, and she is also one of many great artists with vibrant murals across the city. Welcome to the show, Rose.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, how has your art practice changed during COVID?
My art practice hasn't changed too much. I had just started a residency at a print studio kind of right before everything shut down. So I was excited about being there, and then that place shut down. So I was kind of back in my studio. But honestly, it hasn't shifted too much. I'm really lucky that I have a studio space that I can come to and felt safe. So I was spending, if anything, more time in my studio
Mm,
alone, just kind of making tons of art. And yeah, I also continue to do a lot of murals throughout 2020 because construction continued, and kind of I was also painting outside, which was safe, and I was generally alone, or I was
mm.
painting in a construction site that was empty. So, um, yeah, my workflow and my art flow hasn't altered too much. I think the content has changed a little bit, but
Mm.
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? How has your content changed?
Well, I think in the beginning, I was really finding that I needed more and more of an escape with my art. I've been over the years do a lot of kind of social justice art, and still love kind of working with that content. But I was just on kind of an internal level, really finding like I wanted to make art that was sometimes even just like shapes,
Mm,
something I had never really done before. And I was finding I was making really kind of fun, sort of joyful kind of dancing figures, and almost funny, like kind of different people in like beds of mushrooms, and kind of, I don't know, I was just kind of getting lost in my art, and I was also spending a lot more time outside throughout the pandemic. So I a lot of that has come into my work in
mm.
a lot of different ways.
Very cool. I noticed that your work is very vibrant and colorful. Have you always created work that way? Was there a point that you used different mediums, but like, why do you choose to use such bright colors in your pieces?
You know, I it's so funny because in college, I almost exclusively painted and drew in just black and white. I was like obsessed. I was really into graphic novels and kind of comics and cartoons. And I did art for the school newspaper. And I was really into like line art and illustration. And so I would do very like tight, realistic line drawings. And I was really into, just black ink on
Hmm.
white paper. And I think color for a while sort of scared me almost. I didn't really feel like I had a grasp of how colors fit together, or I never really knew where to start. I was very overwhelmed. And then something shifted when after art school, I kind of came home, and I don't know exactly what that point was, but I had my first solo show in 2014, and it was called Women in Color. And it was just like kind of my start of just celebrating all of the internal colors. I think that was part of it, was that I was feeling like there were so many colors in the diverse group of people around me, and I was so inspired by them, and I couldn't define them by just one color. And so I was like, wow, I need to explore pinks and purples and turquoises and all the shades of blue. And it was like once I opened that box of color, it was like, it was like a love affair.
I love it. Would you say
Yeah,
that DC and the DC art scene inspires your work?
absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely. The DC and the DC art scene inspires my work tremendously, actually. And I think because I'm just inspired a lot by the people that I surround myself with and seek out. And that was also something I never really expected, but I sort of came to love the community that I was around in DC because I felt so much support coming back to DC as an
Mhm.
artist. And I'm born and raised in DC, and I never really thought I'd stick around, to be honest. I kind of, yeah, I thought that I'd move home for a bit and kind of maybe move to like LA, or I don't know, somewhere abroad. I had all kinds of different plans. And then I found studio space here. I fell in love with somebody here. And I just, yeah, I felt like the art community kind of opened its arms a little bit. And I was surprised by that for some reason, and
Yeah.
really just, I was excited also by that. So I just stuck around and I've loved it ever since.
So, what was the pivotal moment when you decided to follow your path as an artist?
You know, I was talking to someone recently, and I think they were commenting that kind of like art almost chooses you, you know? It's like, and I think that it's like I can't not be making art. Art it's like a part of the fiber of who I am. And I've been making art since I can remember,
Mm,
really. I mean, I was, 6 years old when I, made this piece of art that I remember. And I always was supported in that journey too, which I think is really important. I grew up in a house full of art,
nice.
kind of gallery style, just like sculptures and art, and just, my grandparents had a lot of art. And so there was a lot of value of art. And so I was always encouraged instead of discouraged. And I think that's really important. And so I was in art classes in and out of school, just back to back. That's just what I wanted to spend my time with. And then art college, it was a great privilege to, keep studying art. And I just, studied art, and it was like my love for art only became like more vast and deep. And I just have just loved it more and more.
I love that. So there was, would you say that there would never be a moment for you to question that you were going to be an artist? Did you already know, like, I'm going to be an artist and everything else, that I feel like is, a potential may not, be my path? Like, was there a moment where you kind of felt like, can I do this? Basically, is my question.
Well, you know, I always thought that I would do something creative,
Mm.
but I didn't really, like, when I left art school, I had a very clear, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a freelance illustrator. That's like, I'm going to move home and I'm going to be a freelance illustrator. And, that's like the term I had in my mind of what I would be. And then of course I moved home and nobody knew who I was, and nobody, I didn't have very much of a portfolio. And obviously I didn't have any jobs. So I worked doing a bunch of different odd end jobs for a while. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to be a graphic designer because that's a field people go into that's creative. And so I took a continuing education class at the Corcoran. Um, strange why I didn't take a single graphic design class at art school. Um, but I guess it came to pass that, oh, it's because I really hated graphic design. And I just didn't find anything exciting about it. So I was like, well, I'll scratch that off the list. And then I started teaching art, and that was really great. And it really wasn't until I was teaching for about, my third year of teaching that I was like, I don't want to be doing something that's not making my own art full
Mm.
time. And I think it took me about 4 years out of school to really come to that conclusion, that I was like, oh, I need to really figure out how I can sustain myself making my own art. Um, and so that was a big leap. And then once I decided I wasn't going back to teaching, that felt like the jump of like, oh my God, I'm like starting my business, and am I going to be able to like pay my bills? And I had really saved up money at that point, so I had some cushion. But it was a big leap, and I'm really, really, really glad that I made it.
Me too, because you've done so well. I love it.
Thank
so,
you.
why do you love what you do?
Ah, it's a tough question. You know, why do I love what I do? I'm so excited by art. It's something that it's kind of like constantly inspires me. And I feel like you want to do something that constantly feels exciting, and new. And I think art is one of those things that I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna like pick up some pastels and like play with that today. Or I there's so many different mediums. And I just feel like there's kind of an endless world of things to explore with art. And I also love that it's been such a place of it's been a place of healing for me. It's been a place of communicating with myself and with others that I think I couldn't really do through other means. It's really been a way of connecting with other people. I'm like, oh, I didn't really think I knew who I was in high school, and finally college, going to art school. I was like, oh, these are my
My
people.
people. Yes.
Here they are. I love like just people being free to express themselves and whatever that looks like. um, I love art. I love everything like poetry and dancing and so much creative expression. And I feel so inspired going to museums and feeling like, wow, I'm so inspired by that painting. I might go home to my studio and try to like explore how they did that. So I think I love doing it because it's something that I never feel tired of I never feel tired of it, and I'm always excited about it.
I love that. So, how did you get into murals and how many have you done so far?
How many have I done? I People ask me that, and I'm like, God, I really need to count. Um, I think I want to say at probably about 30, or
Wow.
probably a little more than that at this point. Um, I really got into murals in this show that I did in 2014, which was kind of my first real showing of work. It was my first solo show, and the it was at the Fridge Gallery, and there had been kind of a rotating, mural thing going on the outside of the building, and I had never painted a mural outside, and I asked Alex if I could, and he was like, "Yeah, do it."
Love it.
And yeah, I mean, something about just painting on that wall outside and kind of having people come up and ask questions and check it out, and then standing back and being like, wow, this is just a huge painting. And I was really hooked at that point. Um, and I knew I wanted to do more of them, but I didn't really have a portfolio of murals. So I started to paint the walls of my studio, and photograph that, and then I repainted back
It's pretty
white again,
smart.
and then yeah, it's totally, if you need to build up your portfolio, just paint the walls that you have around, or
Hmm.
I would also paint just like big, huge pieces of paper, things like that. And once I kind of started to apply for things and got more jobs, I kind of, spun off from there.
What would you say? Well, I know this question is kind of like, difficult to answer because all of the pieces artists makes are our babies. But which mural would you say is like your ultimate favorite?
Ah, that is somebody just recently asked me that, and I just like was drawing a total blank, and you'd think that I would have thought of something by now. It's funny because it sort of shifts, like often I love my most recent pieces, but then as I get further away from them, I like them less, which sounds kind of bad, but sometimes I like love them more. But there's as I get better at my practice, I look back at them and I'm like, ooh, I could have done better at this or that, or I would have approached this differently, or I make better designs now, I think, or I hope. Um, But you know what's been really great is I've been doing a lot of these murals in elementary schools through a
Mm.
really great program that DC has, and I've done probably 6 or 7 pretty substantial
Oh, wow.
commissions. And I painted a piece at Maury that was 3 stories on both sides of the hallway. And it was like one side was each floor was a different biome, was like the theme of the school. And so there was like the jungle scene at the bottom and kind of like the forest scene in the middle and kind of a, like deserty scene on the top. And then on the other side of the hallway was an abstracted version of the scene with all the animals. And like I just pitched this idea and they were totally down with it. And I spent about a month painting it.
Wow.
And it was, I think I'm really proud of that because it's one of the largest things I've done. And I could really just sit there all day inside without anybody bothering me and like render a huge moose. Um, and then I kind of liked the idea of being able to paint this really tight thing and then kind of this just blobs on the other side. And I
Yeah.
liked kind of how they talk to each other. So yeah, I think that's one of my favorite pieces. It's at Maury Elementary School.
Love that.
Yeah.
So, what would you say if you have any challenges that you have faced as an artist?
Yeah, I haven't really faced any challenges. No, I'm just kidding. Oh my goodness, we all face challenges. I have
Yeah.
faced many, many a challenge in every type of way. Goodness, where do I start with the challenges? I mean, I think that when I first wanted to, make the leap to being a full-time artist and kind of, I guess, starting my business, um, there was definitely people that were like, okay, I get that you're an artist on the side, but, I really don't think that you could really make a living as an artist.
Mm.
And I heard that not from my family, which was really great, but just from other people that were close to me in my life. And um, I think if anything, that fueled the fire of like, let me show you,
Yeah.
I know that I can do this. But I think that was, that's just sort of a systemic thing that I think people, that I'm committed to shifting the narrative around the idea of a starving artist. And I still hear that a lot, a lot today that people are like, oh, they just assume that you're not doing well.
Right. Yeah.
Basically, if you make art, that's like, that's too bad. I mean, people are excited that you spend your time doing that, but I think the challenges are as a freelancer, you know, it's a choice in my life that I wouldn't have any other way. But I do have to make my own schedule and find my own clients and do all my own book work and keep everything organized. And you have to like run the show front and back. And I think like that's not easy. But the flip side of that is that I can make my own schedule and kind of determine what I do in my life. So I just really wouldn't have it any other way. So I think that a lot of the challenges that I faced have also been lessons and kind of gifts in the end, if I choose to look at them that way.
Yeah, that's great. Um, is there an experience in your life that has changed the way that you look at yourself as an artist?
Man, wow. Um, you know, I have sort of I've had some difficult health challenges in my life, and I think that has really shifted a lot of how I approach everything in my life. And I think it's kind of led me down a path that I didn't expect to go on, which was a very spiritual path.
Hmm.
And I think that has really influenced my art in ways that I wouldn't have, expected. I was always into yoga and kind of that was kind of it. um, But I really, after just countless, you know, like doctors and just Western medicine
Mm.
roadblocks, basically, I kind of really was like, well, I feel like I have just tried and barked up this tree for a long time. Let me like explore other facets of healing. And, I was lucky enough to spend time in India and spend time in an ashram there and really kind of diving more into Ayurveda and
Mm.
a lot of like healing through food and just reconnecting with myself, really, and listening to what my body needed. And I think that we're so disconnected, and by design, the system really wants us to be very disconnected to ourselves. And so that we outsource a lot of the healing that we think we need,
Mm-hmm.
whereas there's a lot of healing that we already have inside of our minds and ourselves, and food that grows. Um, so I think that through that, really just kind of very interestingly found its way into my art. I started making these figures that had like this one eye.
Yes,
And
I
I,
wanted to ask
yeah,
you about that.
yes, they kind of just by repetition of drawing these figures, I was kind of drawing them with like a face and then kind of a third eye. And then it just sort of became one eye. And
Mm.
I think that was through a lot of deep meditation. And that was kind of some of the peak time that I was really suffering and just finding like I was almost drawing these figures as a way of, you know, guiding and helping and all of those types of things. So yeah, I think that that's been a really interesting byproduct of kind of the journey that I didn't expect my life to go on.
Yes, I love that. How much of your personality do you think reflects in your work?
Well, goodness, I mean, it's like I spend so much time making art that sometimes like they feel like the same thing. I mean, my art is kind of quirky, it's funny, it's like, um, you know, but then I also get I'm very inspired by other artists.
Mm.
And so I kind of will see something online or like at a show or something, um, and then be like, I want to try to do that. So I'll spend a while kind of trying to be like, well, I want to start to draw whole figures and groups out of one line because I saw like this other person do that. Um, but I think in general, I try not to take myself too seriously. And I certainly don't feel like I take my art too seriously. I love making it. I don't feel very attached to it. I make a lot of art and move a lot of art. If my art gets ruined, it's like not the end of the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think hopefully the good things show up in my art.
Do you have any creative blocks? And if you do, how do you overcome them?
I do have creative blocks. Absolutely. I generally overcome them by working like through them.
Mm.
I just like I just will come to the studio anyways, and I'll just kind of like today I'm here and I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm kind of stopping and starting things. I really dislike a lot of the things that I'm doing, but I just kind of keep going. I kind of make marks here and there. I'll pick up a different tool and be like, oh, well, maybe I'll like cut some paper out into shapes and see if
Hmm.
that's like sparking anything. So I just, I definitely I have creative blocks. I have times where I'm bored with what I'm making and it doesn't excite me. I'm like, okay, I've been making the same person with the eye. I'm like, okay, I've done that. Like, what else am I doing? And I want to always be excited by what I'm making. Um, but yeah, in general, I will also go to like a show or um, spend time on, I don't know, Pinterest or something like that, and that might help stir things up a little bit.
Do you have a schedule or you just go to the studio when you feel like it? if you don't have a project or anything, you just, what is your schedule like?
Well, I've been trying to be better about my schedule. I've kind of found that Mondays are kind of like my admin work days. I try to kind of like, it's like the time in the week where I feel like, I guess, first of all, I'm trying to take weekends off of work, which is kind of a new thing. I feel like I'm such a workaholic that I'm just like, every day is a work day. But now I'm like, no, I think with the pandemic, things slow down. I like downshifted gears a little bit. So my weekends are my time. Sundays are studio days
Mm,
where I'm just like, I pulled in a million different directions, but I'm like, no, studio day, Sunday. And I like more and more, I want it to be like analog studio day. So I'm not like looking at my iPad. I'm not like kind of doing digital stuff, but I'm just playing with crayons and paint and stuff like that. So then I feel really replenished after that time. So that I'm like, all right, Monday, I'm kind of like, okay, I can get back on my computer, answer emails, and do stuff like that. And it feels really good to just get a lot of that checked off my list so that Tuesdays have become days that I'm here in Atlantic because I'm still doing my residency there.
mm.
And that's been great. And then the rest of the week's kind of up in there. But in general, I like to kind of be home in the mornings doing admin stuff and then ideally get to the studio like in the afternoon and then kind of work through the evening doing this and that in the studio. But basically as much time as I can.
Yeah, I love that. So I had just have a few questions left for you.
Cool.
One of them is, how important do you think social media is for you as an artist, especially during this time when we're not really interacting with others as much?
Instagram has been really great for me. I think I got onto Instagram at a good time, which is kind of a long time ago, probably yikes, like 5 years ago at this point. Um, so the algorithm was really helpful. I got a lot of people following me, and it's just been great.
Mm.
I have a good platform. I sell work through Instagram. I get jobs. There's people that I don't even know that reach out to me for this and that. Um, Not on Facebook so much. But nowadays I'm kind of backing away from Instagram a little bit. I feel less happy being on there. I don't really, it is not serving me. I'm kind of scrolling endlessly and I kind of hate that. I don't have a ton of self control. Um, so I'm trying to shift away from Instagram. I'm taking more and more time off of it and hoping to kind of build up more of like an email newsletter situation.
Mm,
Although, you know, I don't really know what I'm doing there, but I'm trying to facilitate that. So I think that social media it kind of depends what your intention is. If it's really about, it's really hard if you're just joining Instagram right now. Like the algorithm is not in your favor. It's much more of a pay to play. Like it's really tough. So, if your intention is to like get a ton of followers, like that is hard. If it's just kind of a place where, kind of like an easy portfolio for people to check your stuff out, I think it's really helpful to have an Instagram. Um, what I do tell, young or emerging artists is that I do find it helpful to kind of keep your feed sort of streamlined to your art, and think about what you like to look at. Like if I
mm,
follow someone and I really like their art, but I don't really maybe know or their persona as like a brand isn't so much a part of their work, but then they kind of post a bunch about like their cat or like what they had for dinner, then I'm like less interested and might unfollow. But so kind of keep it consistent, I would say, because people that follow you generally like that. And I think if you're like, well, what do people like? Then be like, well, what do you like? You know?
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. That was a really great
Okay.
answer.
Okay.
Okay, so my last question is, what message do you try to share through your work? What are you trying to say?
Yes. Oof, that's so good. I'm always kind of working on that. ultimately, I think that art is a very, very powerful tool to connect with each other and to connect with yourself. I think it's a very powerful tool to heal each other and heal yourself. And I think it's also a very wonderful medium in which to imagine new futures and like imagine, you know, and illustrate and, create songs about or dances about like a future that we can't even, that a lot of people can't vision. I
Mm.
think I get very inspired by the role artists play in literally illustrating and visioning something different than what we have right now. So I hope that my art, on possibly a surface level, is vibrant and playful and brings like just a feeling of joy, because I really think we need that right now.
Yes, we
Um,
do.
yes. And then I think a little deeper than that, I hope that it kind of serves as a way to shine light on kind of the power of art to really tell stories about us and find those points of connection between all of us that we really all have, and ultimately as a way that we can heal, because I think there's a lot of healing that needs to happen.
Yes, yes, yes. So before we officially conclude, do you mind if we play a very quick game? It's called This or That.
Yes, love it.
Okay, so after you provide your answer, you'd have to kind of say why you chose that person or that thing.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Georgia O'Keeffe or Judy Chicago?
Judy Chicago.
Why?
Wait, is Judy Chicago? Oh, yes, 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 Judy Chicago. She did the dinner table.
Yes.
Yes. Oh man, Judy Chicago is awesome. Um, and she just had a show like about a year ago, maybe a little more, at the National Museum of Women in the Arts that I checked out. And, you know, I love Georgia O'Keeffe's work. I think I would rather have a Georgia O'Keeffe in my house,
Mm-hmm.
but Judy Chicago's, I'm really about what she's all about. I think she's badass. I think that, you know, her her dinner table piece was visionary for the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that is a seminal piece of kind of feminist work. And her show recently was very dark and difficult, especially the room with all the kind of dead animals,
Mm.
about climate change. But, I think she's just somebody that really goes there and isn't afraid of who she is, what she's about, and really making that loud and proud in her work. And I really respect that and am inspired by it.
Love that. Nick Cave or Kehinde Wiley?
Ooh, who was the first person?
Nick Cave.
Ooh, which one is Nick Cave again? Is
Nick
he's
Cave's
like,
the very colorful and beautiful costumes, and then he usually does like
oh yes,
performances.
yes, of course. Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. Wow. I'm just reflecting on a show that I saw of his work that was like jaw-droppingly incredible. That being said, I really love Kehinde Wiley's work, and I think that I just, on an aesthetic level, think that they're brilliant. And I also am a portrait artist, and I
Mm-hmm.
really am drawn to his portrait work. And I never tire of painting faces, and I have always loved and painted people. And I definitely would choose Candy Wiley for that reason.
Markers or crayons?
That's tough. That is tough. You know what? I would go markers. I would go markers, even though I've been using kind of some oil crayons lately. It's a very new thing, because I generally would kind of shy away from and couldn't really stand like that you could never have a sharp point. I was
Yeah.
always very frustrated by that. Whereas markers, I mean, I love markers, and I have like a million markers. So I think, yeah, markers.
Sci-fi or drama?
That is hard. I don't really love either, to be honest with you. Um, I guess sci-fi. I mean, drama. It's so funny. I feel like during the pandemic, I've just wanted to watch like documentaries or like very funny things, you know?
Yeah.
So I like drama can be too intense, you know? But I like drama comedies. Is there a word for that? Dramatic comedies or
I
something? So
think it's
I kind of
something, I
like,
forget. Yeah.
yeah. So I really like movies where there's like kind of there's serious things happening, but there's moments of brevity
Yeah.
or levity. Um, And sci-fi, I like sometimes, but I think that yeah, maybe even though I said even though I said sci-fi, I'm gonna land on drama in the end.
Well, Rose, thank you so much for speaking with me today. It's been such a wonderful interview, and I'm so happy that you came to the show.
This has been so great. Thank you. What a lovely. I'm so glad you're doing this. I think it's wonderful, and
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for having me.
Yes, I hope after all this is done, or there's some sort of close to being normal again. I would love to come visit you and just,
I would love that. I
take
would love that. And one last thing is that I am having a solo show that opens April 16th.
awesome.
It's called Natural Connections, and it's going to be at Pyramid Atlantic. And I'll post about it and I'll send an email about it. But it's going to be great, and I hope that you can come check it out.
Yes, I'd love to. And that reminded me, please share your all of your social medias and ways that people can learn about you and check out your work.
Okay, awesome. So I'm at Rose_inks on the Instagram, and just rosejaffe.com, and you can check out my online shop and all the other good things through my website.
Lovely. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're the best. Thank you so much. Say hi to